Bring on the villains. It's topic time.
Topic time! It's topic time.
And welcome back to Comic Frontline, everybody. I am Brant Fowler, aka the Gonzo Goose, back with another edition of Topic Time. This time we are talking Spider-Man. Spider-Man is the topic of the hour. Got current story arc that's just wrapped in the comics. A super cool giveaway that we're doing right here on Comic Frontline. I'll talk about more later. We got another movie coming up real soon. And, of course, what happened in Avengers Endgame and all that stuff. So, Spider-Man is very popular. He's always been popular. Come on, let's be honest. But this isn't about Spider-Man in particular, but Spider-Man's villains. His rogues gallery, if you will. And he's got a very deep one. Now, granted, a lot of his villains are kind of cheesy. Some of them are second stringers. Some of them are just annoyances. Some of them have caused him some really significant problems, but they're not top tier. But when you start thinking about Spider-Man and you start thinking about these villains and what some of these villains have meant to his life, both as a superhero and as Peter Parker, and what they've been able to do to Spider-Man and the people that he cares about and he loves, you start to wonder, okay, if you're going to single out one villain and say, this is Spider-Man's greatest villain of all time, who would that be? Now, in my estimation, I've narrowed it down to 6. And that's kind of pretty cool, because one of Spidey's greatest threats throughout his superhero career has been the Sinister Six, various versions of the Sinister Six. But the 6 people that I'm thinking of, if they were to all get together and become the Sinister Six, this would be the definitive Sinister Six, and they would be a threat that he would be very hard-pressed to defeat on his own. Fortunately, Spider-Man is never on his own, and he's got tons of friends and various other spider folks that he can call on. But the 6 villains that I'm thinking of, in my personal opinion, are the top villains. And one of them, if you were going to pick out one of them, who is Spider-Man's Red Skull? Who is Spider-Man's Joker? His Lex Luthor? His Magneto? His whatever? You're going to be hard pressed, because there's some very strong contenders. So, in my estimation, the 6. Let's start with the Kingpin. Now, the Kingpin, primarily thought of as a Daredevil villain, right? But he's been a thorn in Spider-Man's side as well. Especially if you go over to the Ultimate Universe or really early Spider-Man. Kingpin is one of those characters that kind of, I think at one point, even in the main continuity, he knew who Peter Parker was Spider-Man, if I'm remembering correctly. It's been a long time since I've read those old issues, but he's the Kingpin of crime in New York, in Hell's Kitchen, of course, but Spider-Man has kind of been a thorn in his side, and therefore he became on Kingpin's radar, and Kingpin would send various thugs against him, just like he did with Daredevil. But as big as the Kingpin is, no pun intended, but as big as the Kingpin is as a villain and even as a force in Spider-Man's life, I don't really see him as the main guy, the main villain in Spider-Man's life. There's just not been enough major happenings between the two to make him that guy. But he is definitely one of the guys, in my estimation, that has been a detriment to everything Spider-Man stands for. And let me clarify also, I'm talking supervillains. I'm not talking J. Jonah Jameson, because really J. Jonah Jameson would be right up there as one of Spider-Man's main villains. But I'm not going that route. I'm sticking with supervillains here. So next up, you have Kraven the Hunter, which this story arc just wrapped up this week. I'm not going to talk about that or spoil it. I actually have not read it as I'm recording this yet. He has literally hunted Spider-Man several times. Kraven's last hunt, that's like his white whale as Spider-Man. There's like some serious personal stuff there between these two. There's been some serious things happen to Spider-Man because of Kraven. And not just Spider-Man, but everyone in his life, everyone he loves and cares about. Kraven has threatened that on more occasions than once. and he keeps coming back and coming after him, and even after death. And it's just, I mean, of course, that's not really saying much in the world of comics, but Kraven has been a driving force to end the life of Spider-Man, just to put him as a trophy on a wall. You know, it's like, it's this epic story, but at the same time, Kraven is as serious as his attacks have been on Spider-Man, as serious as his influence in Spider-Man's life has been, and as great as those iconic stories are, he's just not present enough to be that guy. You know what I mean? He's more of an Apocalypse to the X-Men as opposed to Magneto, who was always in their face. You know what I'm saying? It's that kind of thing. So that's why, in my estimation, Kraven is one of the 6 top threats, but not the threat. Then you have the Jackal. Now, the Jackal has been this pestering annoyance to Spider-Man that has kind of done a couple of really big things that have messed up Peter Parker's life immensely in a couple of situations. And yes, they were basically the same things, and even when the Jackal was a different person, when it was Ben Reilly, it's still that influence of the Jackal cloning and replacing not just Peter Parker, but other characters as well. It's a huge thing. The whole clone saga, both the original, like way back in like once, I think it was 170, or was it 70? It's a really early issue in the Spider-Man, in Amazing Spider-Man. That whole original clone thing that came back in the 90s with the clone saga and then has been revisited over and over again. The Jackal has been at the core of that. The Jackal has brought back Gwen and kind of stirred up all these emotions and emotional turmoil for Spider-Man. So he's definitely been somebody that has ruined Spider-Man's life on multiple occasions. Again, like Kraven though, he kind of pops up, he's there for a little bit, then disappears. And he pops up, he's there for a little bit and disappears. Yes, what he does when he's there is detrimental. It's devastating, but you can't qualify him as the villain for Spider-Man because of that, in my estimation again. So there's 3 of your 6. So that gives you your top 3. And I'll just go ahead and break down my top 3. My top 3 Spider-Man villains are Dr. Octopus, Venom, and Green Goblin. And really, honestly, most Spider-Man fans would probably pick those 3 as well, or at least 2 of those 3. I know not everybody's a fan of Venom, but when you're thinking about the top villains, the top forces that have worked against Spider-Man, that have weaseled into his life, that have messed up his life to the nth degree, that have just destroyed aspects of his life and his superhero life and the lives of everyone around him, these 3, hands down, are the most devastating. Now, some would argue Moreland. I didn't put Moreland here just because I hate Moreland. I hate that whole I can't even think of what they're called, but the basically the spider vampire people. Their name is escaping me, and we just have these events, and I'm just trying to drive them out of my mind because I hate them. But at the same time, again, Moreland was one of these things that came up every once in a while when they needed a big bad that was just above and beyond. But I still don't qualify that as the definitive Spider-Man villain. I just don't. In my mind, my estimation, he's not on the same level as these guys that have been fighting Spider-Man for decades. You know, he's this guy that came up. It's like, oh, we need some new villain to come in and become this. And I get that Venom was kind of the same thing, but Venom has had a lot more staying power, maybe overused, and maybe Moreland will get to that point, but I don't know. I just don't classify him in the same league as these other guys, even if he is more powerful, technically. But really, he was kind of like a whole Spider family villain, as opposed to just Spider-Man. I mean, it started off with just Spider-Man with the Other and all that stuff, but I don't know. I just, in my estimation, he just was not. He didn't make the cut here. Maybe he should have. Actually, I didn't think about it. Maybe he should have over Kingpin. To be quite honest, he probably would have ranked a little bit higher for me. But anyway, top 3 after that huge tangent, and I'm already 10 minutes into this thing, so let's break this down. So top 3: Venom, Green Goblin, Dr. Octopus. Who is Spider-Man's greatest villain? Now, for a long time, I would estimate that Venom was the greatest villain for Spider-Man. And I understand a lot of people are going to feel a lot differently about that. And I don't even feel that way anymore. It's just at one point in time, when I started reading comics, like really reading weekly, going to the comic shop and everything, it was around that time when 300 was coming out. Venom was making his first appearance. He knew who Spider-Man was. He had Spider-Man's number. He was like the bigger, stronger, faster, more powers version of Spider-Man that knew who he was, had all his memories, and could attack his family. And through the years, he's done that and gone back and forth, good guy, bad guy. But he's always at that period in time, he was the guy that could just take Spider-Man both emotionally and physically to another level that nobody else could. But over time, that faded. And he became a hero and an anti-hero, and they teamed up, and they understood each other, and he died and came back, and he transferred to all these different things. So, because of that, Venom isn't quite up there. And, technically right now, he's not even a villain, and he's definitely not on Spider-Man's radar as far as that goes. So, you can't really say he's the greatest villain, but at one point in time, I think definitively he was Spider-Man's greatest villain, and he stood a chance of being that guy. But he didn't quite make the cut for me either. Then you have Dr. Octopus. Dr. Octopus, he has been this, I hate to keep using thorn in the side, but he has been that little pestering person that has just plagued Peter Parker's life over and over and over again. Whether it's in film, animation, whatever. He is this guy that keeps coming back, and he has Spider-Man's number. And it's kind of interesting that you have Spider-Man, who has, except for that one storyline, has like just 2 arms. Then you have his counter, which is an octopus, and he fully has the whole 6 arms and going on and all that stuff. So it's interesting. Visually, you got this, comparison psychologically. They're both intelligent scientists and all this stuff. And Dr. Octopus has found ways to get under Peter's skin and get into his life through Aunt May by ultimately becoming him. And so it's like this guy did the unthinkable. He literally just took over Peter's life. He basically killed him and buried him deep within the recesses of his own mind. And it was just this hugely emotional thing. And I know there's a lot of mixed feelings about Superior Spider-Man and Dan Slott's whole run, but I thought that concept was brilliant. No matter what you thought of Dan Slott's actual writing and storytelling, I thought that concept was brilliant. And I actually enjoyed the whole Superior Spider-Man run, the original one. And but ultimately, he came to his senses. He became a heroic character because Spider-Man got through to him and kind of turned a new leaf, and now he's trying to live that heroic life. So ultimately, he's not a bad guy. He never was totally a bad guy. Yeah, there was a period in time where he was a cheesy, corny kind of villain that just went out to murder people and rob stuff and cursed that Spider-Man kind of villain, but overall, he became this character that you actually kind of related to and felt for and wanted to see succeed. So, because of that, you can't classify him as the villain either. So that leaves you with one, which is most people's main Spider-Man villain, which is the Green Goblin. And yes, the Green Goblin has been the main villain in every single thing that you could think of. And the reason being is because this guy hates Spider-Man and will stop at nothing to see him destroyed, no matter what. This guy has, and he has other agendas. He's died and come back, of course, like anybody else. But this guy has done things to Spider-Man that just for spite, just because of mental breakdown, or the serum, or just because he's like, he feels betrayed, just various reasons. The guy is messed up, but at the core of it, it's always Spider-Man has to die. Peter Parker is my enemy, my mortal enemy. He killed his girlfriend, right? He tried to kill everybody. Flash Thompson died in the whole Red Goblin go down swinging event. He dated Gwen, had children, and it was like that's just like perverse, man. It was a clone of Gwen, but still the whole situation was just skeevy, and it was just throwing it in Peter's face, man. And everything that he's done, he's taken over the Avengers, and he tried to play good guy when ultimately he came back and became a villain for Spider-Man again. And it's just like over and over again he has showed his true colors, and over again he has showed that he is this maniacal, sadistic, hateful, villainous, murderous human being that is bent on taking Peter Parker and his entire family and friends and his life away from him. Everything. You can't get more villainous than that. I don't think. So when it comes to Spider-Man's greatest villain, I think you have to give it to the Green Goblin. So what are your thoughts? I know this was a long topic time, much longer than I usually do, but I felt like it was warranted in this case. I'm a huge Spider-Man fan, and these villains resonate with me, and I felt like I wanted to give them each their due, even if I didn't go into details and specifics about storylines and story arcs for most of them. Partially because I'm trying to piece together, remember, because it's been a long time since I've read some of them, and others, they're more recent in memory, and it's just like, okay, I can pull from these, and I definitely need to highlight these three specifically, the top three, because of what they've meant to me as a Spider-Man fan, and what they meant to Spider-Man, of course. But I would love to hear your thoughts. Who you think Spider-Man's main villain is? Is it Green Goblin? Is it somebody else? Is there somebody that I forgot, that I left out? Do you disagree with me about Moreland? Should Kingpin even be in this list? Go on and on. I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. And what would you think if D6 became the Sinister Six? What kind of force would that be? Would you have to bring in Miles and Spider-Woman and Gwen and et cetera, to combat that? Would that be enough? It'd be interesting discussion. Maybe that'll be a future topic time. Kind of like putting together my own Sinister Six and figuring out a storyline and kind of going back and forth with you guys. But I would love to hear your thoughts below. But speaking of Spider-Man and go down swinging and all these villains and key moments in Spider-Man's life, we do have Spider-Man and his amazing giveaway going on right now. Check it out, comicfrontline.com/giveaway. Link is in the description below. Very cool prize pack for you. There's a video Mike Spider-Slayer did. It'll be in the end screen. You can check that out, and it'll be in the description below as well. Or you can just look on Comic Frontline for it. Please, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. Hit that subscribe and notification bell so you get updates on all the content going up to this channel. And you can follow me at Brand Fowler on Facebook and Twitter, and at Last of the Press on Instagram. And until next time, thanks for watching. We'll see you real soon. Bye.
Topic time! It's topic time!